So could you tell us, Dana, what does it mean for Bulley Andrews, like, broadly?
Yeah, I was thinking about this morning, and I think the trap of innovation is this idea that it's a very broad thing, but people think about it very narrowly, and people I think it's got to be technology related, and it's got to be this big Shark Tank idea. And I think that the way that we view innovation is at its core and its heart, it's really just problem solving and figuring out what the challenges of the business are, whether it be in the field or it be in accounting, like what those challenges are, and figuring out a new way of looking at it.
Going through some of the emails from people that have reached out to you, what is a great subject line that would catch your attention and make you want to open the email?
Oh man, read this in all caps. No, I don't know. I think it has to catch my attention in a way that like it communicates what the product is or what the application is that they're selling. If it's something that I know we don't need, like we don't work in the manufacturing space, so if I get something that suggests that it's an application specific for that space, I may just delete it. But I'm really focused on the products or the applications that the business needs.
What's your top advice to founders that are trying to sell to contractors like you?
That you should focus on just as much of relationship building as sales. Like I have advised other companies that I think your best sales team could be your current customers, and to use your current customers as you would a sales team. But that assumes that you've got a really good relationship with that vendor, which takes time to build. So you also have to be comfortable with potentially like a long sales cycle, because I have to feel comfortable with the team that I'm buying the product for. You know what I mean? I have to feel comfortable that I'm buying a product with people that I ultimately want to do business with. And if I don't trust you, or if I don't trust your intentions, or if I think you're just trying to get the sale done, that doesn't feel good. And that doesn't make me think that you're going to be committed to our success in onboarding that product.
How do you think the role of the general contractor will evolve over the next 5 to 10 years?
I hope that there is a world that exists where the general contractor, or maybe in general, like we move to more of a integrated project delivery format of construction. I think the general contractor in general gets pulled in way too late, and a lot of problems could potentially be mitigated if they're just brought in much earlier in the design process.
How is technology actually used in AEC? In Corporate Innovations, we explore the innovation and implementation procedures used by those who actually use the tech on a day-to-day basis. Before we get started though, if you're a startup founder or operator responsible for innovation in your company, or you want a deeper, more insightful look into technology in AEC, you won't want to miss our newsletter. From deep dives into particular technologies such as AI, robotics, design, software, and so on. Hot takes from investors betting big in AEC technology, and advice on building tech companies, including the stories and takeaways of the most successful AEC technology founders. Head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today to get this exclusive material straight to your inbox. And now for the episode.
Okay, good after morning. It's early afternoon, and morning where Dana is. So Dana, you're the VP of Technology and Innovation at Bulley Andrews, and thanks for joining us today. Could you tell us, your role, even though I just done that, and perhaps what you do on a day-to-day?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm super excited to be a part of this as a follower of Bricks Bytes. But so as VP of Tech and Innovation, I wear many, many different hats depending on the day. So part of my day is just on managing. I oversee a couple different technology departments here. It's the virtual design and construction department, where we're about 9 or 10 strong. Our company enterprise technology department, and our IT/cybersecurity department as well. So my day is really split into, 3 different parts, allocating time to each of those teams. I leave like my morning and my sort of right before I go home as research time. So going through my email, seeing who's reached out to me, what kind of sales emails I've gotten, doing some research in the space. And then really it's just every day is something different. I could be out at the job site working with a project team. I'm really focused on just learning at this point, especially since the space is evolving at such a rapid pace. Part of my day might be working on pursuits for the company. Part of my day might be, I'm also the chair of our diversity, equity, and inclusion group. So part of my day is dedicated to just figuring out what our programming is going to look like over the next few weeks or few months. So it truly varies every day depending on needs, what's in the docket for the company, what do we have for this quarter, what do we want to focus on. It really varies, but it's a wide range of responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. And for the context, could you give us our listeners an idea of like what's the revenue and what type of product do you do day to day? How big is the organization?
Yeah, Bulley Andrews is, I would say, a medium to large size general contractor headquartered in Chicago, Illinois. Most of our work is centered in the Midwest, but we do have national and occasionally international reach, and that really depends on where our clients want us to work. We are approximately $800 million as of this year. We do most services, call it, we're not in the civil or heavy highway space, but you'll see us in schools, community centers, institutional spaces, hotels, hospitals, things like that. We do also carry a couple hundred FTEs for self-performance as well, so that makes us a little bit unique in the city of Chicago and what our capabilities are.
Hey listeners, I want to take a quick break to remind you about the Bricks and Bytes newsletter. If you're interested in learning about the technology shaping the future of construction, you won't want to miss the valuable insights we share each week. To get this exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox, head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today. Link is in the show notes. Back to the show.
And yeah, we are, I think, 135 years old as of this year. So we've been around for a while, still family owned and operated.
Very good. You mentioned something that caught my attention because I asked this to someone last week, and we have been doing quite a bit of work on go-to-market. So you mentioned that going through some of the emails from people that have reached out to you, what is a great subject line that would catch your attention and make you want to open the email?
Oh man, read this in all caps. No, I don't know. I think it has to catch my attention in a way that like it communicates what the product is or what the application is that they're selling. If it's something that I know we don't need, like we don't work in the manufacturing space, so if I get something that suggests that it's an application specific for that space, I may just delete it. But I'm really focused on the products or the applications that the business needs. The sales emails are so hard. The ones that bother me the most, though, are the ones where we actually already have a contract with that company, and there's back to me as like a new customer.
This was mentioned as well.
Where we said, no thanks, not at this time, and they keep coming back. Those are the worst ones.
Yeah, that's a big downside of cold outreach.
Yeah.
Lack of control.
Hey, Martin, I was thinking about this guide we're writing. We could literally have all this very wisdomic, is that even a word? A lot of wisdom within this guide thing, and then we could just have one headline that's like, the number one takeaway is don't send cold outreach to your existing customers.
Update your CRMs, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you get a lot of emails from potential vendor startups at that point, like recently? And what's been prevailing in the mailbox in terms of like potential new startups approaching in the recent times?
Yeah, we definitely get a lot. Of course, I think the focus right now is on AI, right? So it's a lot of applications around integrating your platforms. It's around data. It's consultants that work in the space and can assist us. It's new products that may have an AI component to it, but maybe sit on a larger platform. It's a lot of things. I think where we tend to go, like I will look at I'll look at those emails and I'll take a look and I'll do some research on the actual application. But we have more success with referrals from other companies that we've worked with that we trust or have a good relationship with. We are a Procore customer, but we do have, I would say friends of the firm in Procore that we trust. And so they provide us with references on new products or applications depending on what we're focused on. And that's really where we have the best relationships because they're coming from a trusted partner that we already work with. Not to say that the cold calls and the cold emails don't make an impact, because sometimes maybe that particular application isn't right for our company, but it could lead me down a road that takes me to something similar, or maybe something completely different depending on what the need of the business is.
Very good. Okay, so could you tell us, Dana, what does it mean for Bulley Andrews, like, broadly?
Yeah, I was thinking about this morning, and I think the trap of innovation is this idea that it's a very broad thing, but people think about it very narrowly, and people I think it's got to be technology related, and it's got to be this big Shark Tank idea. And I think that the way that we view innovation is at its core and its heart, it's really just problem solving and figuring out what the challenges of the business are, whether it be in the field or it be in accounting, like what those challenges are, and figuring out a new way of looking at it. And I would say, for instance, in a way that it doesn't have to be technology based, is we have a senior superintendent that's been with us for a while. I consider him innovative because he's on the job site, and he might come up against a challenge in constructability or the way something's built. And what he will do is hand sketch out an alternative solution that someone has not thought about at all. And it's just paper and pencil, and maybe he has a ruler, but it's so low tech, but he is innovating on a way to build that better or build that more efficiently. So I think if you think of innovation in this sort of narrow mindset of it's got to be technology and it's got to be this big $1 million idea, you're going to limit yourself in what you're capable of, when really it's just how can we solve the problems of the business? And sometimes it's with technology and sometimes it's not.
Mm-hmm. So in your case, where does the technology usually come from, or innovation usually comes from the field, or maybe management is coming up with ideas? We should think about this, implement that. How does it work?
Yeah, I would say the majority of it comes from folks that just work here, the people doing the day-to-day work. So it could come from the field. We have a fairly large private residence being built in Chicago, and they have really taken the time to understand the unique challenges to build this job, the unique requirements that the owner and the owner's rep have, some of the challenges on just getting paperwork done or received in a timely basis. And they're using even the existing products that we have in an innovative way, in ways that we haven't trained on or really talked about, but they're really figuring out a way to maximize the technology that's available to them on that job site. And I think that is where the power and innovation really comes from. I could make suggestions on what I think the company needs, but I am one person, and I'm looking at it from the 50,000 foot view. And really where we see the most buy-in and the most impact is when it comes from the ground. Even from management. Management might point us in a direction to go, but then you get the feeling, I think, if you're on the ground, that you're sort of being voluntold to do something, when it's much more powerful and impactful when it comes from them directly.
What would you say are some of the common pain points? Let's start from the field as we're on that topic. Like, what are the, maybe we could say, biggest pain points that you're experiencing now from the field? And then we could go to maybe more from a office, I don't know if that's the right word, perspective, because I know when we chatted before, Dana, you mentioned a few things.
Yeah, it's almost like a circle in the field. Like it's still like a fairly analog or manual portion of the business. And it's ripe for innovation. It's ripe for technology, but you're at a friction point where, like, I think most people here know that you've got a group of folks in the field that are just ready to retire, and you've got a new set of folks that are coming in who are much younger. And you've got this, I think still you struggle with the adoption component of it. So you want to put technology in the hands of folks because you know that will help them do things more efficiently in the field, but you've got this resistance to change. and they're also being told, just get the job done, right? They don't have time to stop and learn whatever you want to implement in the field. Those challenges are not unique to us by any means, but that is certainly something we struggle with, because there's this painful realization that we have to get started somewhere, and it's hard when you have to bring in those folks that just aren't used to using technology, because they're the ones that have to really validate some of the responses or some of what the technology is showing them, because they have the knowledge to really validate it. So it's been tough, but I think that, you got to start somewhere. And even in accounting, accounting is a very manual portion of the business as well. So I'd say the difference there is that they're eager to automate what they can, so there's at least that acceptance that they know technology could make their life a lot easier. So they are more willing to work with you on finding the right solution that sort of fits their needs as well.
Do you have struggle with things like acquiring labor for projects? And you mentioned obviously some of the field is usually older demographic. Do you foresee, and I wonder if you are also implementing any measures to tackle that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I know I talk about a lot here. And I know everybody thinks about it. I think we're all just a little bit unsure about how to solve for it at this point. You want it to be more than just this company tackling this problem. It's really an industry problem. So I think that, Bulley Andrews can take the steps necessary to work within our own building and our own, with our own people. But this is an industry problem, and I think the industry in general has to figure out what a solution is, instead of allowing it to just be on the hands of the general contractors and the subcontractors in the business, because it's going to affect all of us.
So you mentioned that one of the pain points is struggle with adoption. Maybe on the example, if you are comfortable sharing, could you explain what was the struggle when trying to adopt some of the technologies in the past, like on the particular company example?
Yeah, we have, I can give you two examples. One was maybe a few years ago. It's maybe been longer than that even at this point. And we honestly didn't even really get to the adoption part. It was really a failure in the implementation. And I will tell you that it's a company I thought that was pretty well established. I think also came to us by referral. And, I think throughout the entire process, like, it just felt like you were pulling teeth to get answers from them, and you didn't necessarily feel supported. And then the whole thing just died. I mean, like, there was no relationship with the folks at this company. There was like no onboarding support. We sort of like were left to figure this out on our own. And so we couldn't even really get it off the ground. And then we get an invoice for the next year of service. And it was like a slap in the face. Like, are you
joking?
For real? Like, I mean, because we didn't even use it. Like, it took us a full year to get this thing set up, which we paid for, and then they were ready to invoice us again. So, and then I think one, after that was something that we had really high hopes for, and for whatever reason, it could have been the project team that was testing it. It could have been bad implementation or onboarding, but it didn't work. And that you really wanted it to, because it's a company that is doing a great job marketing themselves. They've got a lot of the top E&R companies working with them. So you always think, as a contractor that's also in that space, like, why not us? Like, hey, we should be looking at this. This should work for us too. Please pick me, type of thing. But it was disappointing when it didn't work out. And I think so much has to do with the way that a product is onboarded and the support that you receive afterwards. Like, if any of those pieces fall apart, I think as the company that has bought into it and is committing to make it work, like, it feels like a big letdown. And if you don't support companies through an onboarding process that could take a lot longer than what your contract says, then it's not going to work. Like, you're just going to feel like you've got, kind of the wool pulled over your eyes a little bit.
I guess that was a startup. That wasn't like an established technology provider, this company.
I would say they're not well established, but they are not a startup.
Understand. Okay. Do you find yourself like looking at technology in construction, um, adopting or speaking to more startups or to more established technology providers?
We definitely, I prefer working with startups. We've had a lot of success working with startups. We worked with one a couple years ago. We helped them bring it's a COI compliance product to market for Procore. And that was a great opportunity for us because we were looking for a new product to do or handle our certificates of insurance compliance. We weren't happy with the provider that we had. This came to us through a reference from Procore, and they were early enough in their development that we could help them influence the product and really tailor it to what matters to us, but also make it general enough that it's a product that they can go to market with. And we're still customers to this day, and I'm thrilled with how well they're doing, and their feature releases are great because they continue to innovate on their product as well. So it's really worked out. I think in general, like, we just have more success working with startups because the makeup of our business is just a little bit different than the top maybe 20 or 50 in our contractors. We're focused on renovation. We do a lot of historical renovation. We've got the self-performance aspect of it as well, and we do so many projects a year. So whereas maybe a company that's twice our size may focus on 20 projects a year, we could do 300 or 400. And so their model, the company's model of what we're looking at, has to support that number of projects, and it's easier for us to influence that if we work with a startup.
Do you think that the renovation space is well equipped in terms of new technologies coming into this space? Because actually, we don't speak to many with too many general contractors dealing with renovations. So, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think it's easier to innovate in ground up construction, in new construction. I think it's much harder, and all the products that we look at, that we see these other bigger contractors have their names on, just don't fit us as well because we do focus so much on renovation. I would love to see more innovation in this space because when you think about all the challenges in renovations, you've got, potentially poor as-built documentation. You've got, maybe just no documentation. You've got, an architect that maybe is designing based on old plans. I mean, there's so many things that could go wrong that it seems like this space is so ripe for like new applications, innovative ideas on how to tackle renovation projects.
Yeah,
renovation is mine's a known bread and butter, so we exactly know what you're talking
about. Feel the pain. It's all the unknowns, typically. Yes.
Exactly.
You start opening the building up, and you go, okay.
You're like, oh crap, yeah.
Yeah.
What are like 1, 2, 3 products that you couldn't live without on renovation products, technology products?
I mean, like BIM, VDC, everything that comes with it. The scan to BIM process has uncovered so many interesting things that on the early planning side have saved us in the construction portion. And we've really leaned into a scan to BIM approach and making sure that we're part of that early investigative planning work that is typical in renovation spaces, because we're able to provide a more accurate set of as-built drawings that has helped tremendously in the planning. I think any kind of virtual planning tool is really essential in this too, because you are working in a shell of a space, right? So any way that you imagine the work has to happen, if you can visually see it first and make sure that you vetted everything out and make sure that the plan is actually going to work, like that has been huge for us. And then I would say I think having like a solid, and this is not innovative at all, but having a solid project management system that allows you to get the answers that you need from the people that are supposed to provide them quickly, I mean, has been a lifesaver too. I mean, it's so much renovation is schedule. It's in just the execution of the work. It's in quality, having an excellent quality program built into your project management program. I mean, it's all of those things I think are essential for renovative projects.
Excellent. Okay, Dana, could you tell us, we'll go into a little bit about your process now. So how do you evaluate which innovations are worth looking at versus ones that are just industry hype?
Yeah, I think, I kind of take a no stone left unturned approach, meaning I'll look at everything. and I'll take a closer look, like I mentioned, on things that come by referral. And then from there, I'll usually take the first meeting and figure out, usually it's with a salesperson, which, no knocking of that process, but we really need to understand the nuts and bolts of the program and how it works. So there usually leads to a second meeting, and the second meeting I'll bring in somebody from whatever department it touches to get feedback. The challenge with that, for us at least, is that we have several different business units in our company, and every business unit sort of operates as its own individual company. So to get everybody's opinion to align on one application is a little difficult sometimes. But if we can articulate what the problem is that we're trying to solve for, then it sort of like levels the playing field. But once we have that second meeting and we get some feedback from, whoever we bring in, it'll usually lead to some sort of like maybe additional meeting or a longer demo or a pilot after that. And then, from there, we have to kind of decide which way we need to go.
Would you do pilots with 2 or 3 providers simultaneously to figure out which one is the best, or you would only do pilot with the one that you think is the best?
Yeah, we do one at a time for sure. I mean, one at a time, but you could be testing multiple projects maybe or products back to back. But trying to do multiples is too hard when they also have to be focused on their jobs as well.
How do you implement the technology once you figure out, oh, that's the right one?
Sorry, Mike, can I just take one step back? I just wanted to go from the beginning of the process. Dana, so far you mentioned that you were doing, so you're finding these solutions which come through referrals to your inbox, cold outreach perhaps, and then you usually speak to the salespeople, then you bring in your department-specific person that it touches, then you go to pilot stage if the solution seems like a good fit?
Yeah, we like to go right to the pilot. I mean, it's the way that we know whether or not this is going to work for our company. So we don't want to spend a whole lot of time in that sales pipeline. I mean, there's obviously some pricing conversations we have just to make sure that this fits in our budget. But then we want to get it on a project and make sure that it is as we expect it to be through that sales cycle.
Do you typically test it on like one project? Or does it depend on the product? Perhaps it's good enough that it can be rolled out to multiple?
It depends on the product and it depends on the project too. So if it's a project that has all of the elements that would be supported in the application, then it could be one product for one project. If we need to test it amongst maybe different business units or different people, or we need different makeups of teams, depending on if we really want it to succeed, or we might put it in the hands of folks that we know are more adept at new technology. If we really want to test it, we want to put it in the hands of maybe folks that are more resistant. So I think there's some strategy there depending on what the product is and what problem it's solving for. So it could be deployed to multiple projects. It could be deployed to just one large project.
And then after pilot, then if they pass or the product seems like a good fit, is it then like implemented? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so then we come up with some sort of implementation strategy. We always want training included. We always want some sort of guarantee of onboarding support. And then there's usually, if it's like an enterprise deployment or some sort of massive program, like our project management solution, obviously with Procore, we had to iterate on it, so we could only implement it in pieces, because if you try to implement it all at once, it was going to be too much for us. So we have to come up with a strategy that allows us to be successful when we implement it, also depending on the workload of the business. So it's got to be timed right. We may opt to implement something when we know our work is slowing down a little bit. Depending on the product, we may have to implement it more in the springtime if it's an accounting product, because of things that they have to do to close out year end. So there's really a lot of strategy that goes into it. And it could be that there are weeks or months that go by before we actually start to implement it, just based on timing of it, because we want it to be successful if we've gotten it to this stage.
Okay, cool. How would you typically define a successful pilot, and how do you avoid things just getting stuck in the pilot stage?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about the one that failed recently, like, it failed for many reasons, right? And part of it was just a trust factor. Like they just didn't trust the information coming from the application.
Was it the AI?
It was an AI application.
How do I know?
And obviously in that space specifically, if you don't trust the information, it's kind of like you just ruin that whole relationship because they can no longer trust the product. The product is made to make you more efficient at what you do, and now what you have to do is ask it a question, get the answer, and then actually go back and validate it, right? Which is not saving them any time. So I think that there are some struggles there, but in the instances where it goes really well, like there's usually a matrix of criteria that we have for a particular application. Like these are the things that we're going to measure it against to define success. And if it checks all the boxes and we're happy with it, we know that product is going to work for us. So I think that we're not, and again, this is me, and we're a one-person innovation team relying on the feedback from the folks that actually work here. So nothing will ever get stuck in a pilot schedule or a pilot stage because we just don't have time for it. So we'll know right away, like if it doesn't work on one project with one team, I'll figure out why. And if it's things that are just not aligned with that particular business unit, then we may try it on a different business unit to see if the feedback is any different. But then after that, we kind of cut the cord. One, because it's a cost thing, and two, just because it's a time suck. And we don't want them to feel like if it's not working, then we don't want to force it on them. And if it's not working just because they don't want to use new technology, that's a whole different conversation. Then it's not working because it's actually making my day harder, or if it's taking more time to do this one thing it's supposed to solve for. Like those are good, valid feedback points that we want to hear, and that will allow us to make a better decision on, do we just cut the cord, or do we try to move it through different business units?
Mm-hmm. You earlier mentioned that you always, if you buy technology, you buy it with a guarantee of onboarding support. So here's my controversial question: if the technology needs onboarding support, I guess quite intense and extensive, perhaps, is it a good technology?
I think so. I mean, I think that a commitment to supporting you through your onboarding shows that they care more than just selling the product. They care about its success in the organization. And I think that's what we want in our relationship with that vendor. We want them to think that we can succeed with that, because where we see failure is when we're left to sort of onboard on our own. Mm-hmm. And also this unrealistic expectation of their product and how long it takes to onboard. So if they're saying that we'll give you, 2 weeks to complete your onboarding, and then you're on the clock for your usage, and then it actually takes us 6 months to onboard because maybe we didn't account for all of the business processes, or whatever, the buy-in, whatever, then they should be supporting us through that process, because they should want us to feel really good about it, so that we can be a referral for their product in the future.
Can you plug some technology that the onboarding was absolutely brilliant, very quick, and you didn't have to spend much time on onboarding and learning how to do it?
Yeah, I think the product that we worked with, the COI compliance product, I would say was smooth. And maybe a portion of that was because we worked with them throughout their development cycle. So we knew the product probably better than we would normally know it if we just bought it off the shelf. And then there was a clear strategy for supporting it when we went live. We had training, we had letters that went out to our subcontractors, we had recorded training, and then we had periodic training to follow up on that. And they were also watching our usage metrics. So if they thought that we were not using it the way that we signed the contract for, then I would get a message and say, hey, what can we do here? I'm noticing that this group isn't using it as much. Do we need to do more training? And that is exactly the type of support you'd want. It's not a massive product. It's not complicated, but having that relationship certainly makes me feel better about buying something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brilliant.
Shout out to them.
Yeah.
Earlier, also, you mentioned pricing conversations that they happen, I guess, during the pilots or perhaps even earlier. What are these pricing conversations? Is it startup is saying, okay, we would like this type of charging model, and that's the cost, and kind of you negotiate it, or you are perhaps suggesting to them, hey, listen, this is solving us this problem and we would be willing to pay you this?
Yeah, I think it depends, right? I think number one, we want to understand how they're pricing their product. And if I hear that they're pricing it on a per project basis, it almost always, no matter how much we like it, will eliminate that relationship, because we have to remind them that, in the world of larger GCs that do less projects, like they're getting an advantage then by paying less because they do less projects. We have 300 or 400 projects. That's going to cost us a lot more money to put us into your platform, or we're going to have to make decisions on who uses it, which we don't want to do. Like if we buy an enterprise product, we want to be able to deploy it across the enterprise and not worry about picking and choosing. So it starts there, and then it usually rolls into, no, we're construction volume based. That's the big one now, and that is a conversation that we often want to hear what their pricing is first, and then it usually gets negotiated from there. And there's obviously consideration on, if you sign by the end of the month, we'll give you a discount, or if you want to do, we in big enterprises, we love being able to roll into it, because it gives us a little bit more peace of mind that we can start small and then deploy it across the enterprise. And then we get buy-in at that point. And so when you have to sell something to, the C-suite or your CFO, it's a little bit easier because you've already got those small wins sort of built up. But the pricing conversation, I started way earlier because I just want to understand how much this is going to cost. And that piece of that conversation may just eliminate them entirely from us getting any further.
This timing pressure is such a turn off.
Yeah.
Can't stand it.
It's actually a key principle influence.
But it's such a turn off.
Urgency.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. Not for thinking people.
Nothing is so urgent too that I have to
exactly
spend a month.
Yeah.
This is not doing taxes or something. We'll wait.
Yeah.
So,
interesting.
What's your top advice to founders that are trying to sell to contractors like you?
That you should focus on just as much of relationship building as sales. I have advised other companies that I think your best sales team could be your current customers, and to use your current customers as you would a sales team. But that assumes that you've got a really good relationship with that vendor, which takes time to build. So you also have to be comfortable with potentially a long sales cycle. Because I have to feel comfortable with the team that I'm buying the product for. You know what I mean? I have to feel comfortable that I'm buying a product with people that I ultimately want to do business with. And if I don't trust you, or if I don't trust your intentions, or if I think you're just trying to get the sale done, that doesn't feel good. And that doesn't make me think that you're going to be committed to our success in onboarding that product.
Yeah, I think this is similar, Martin, actually, to what we discussed with Patrick earlier about a white glove approach, whereby your first few customers who really treat well, as you should every customer anyway, but then ultimately, like you said, Dana, they become your best sales force you can have, because they'll start recommending you and shouting about you from the rooftops to all their friends within the industry.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think that the construction industry, for all of the advantages and gains it's made over the last few years, is still woefully behind in the technology space. So for any company to think that you can just try to sell tech right off the shelf and it'll be bought like that tells me that you don't know the business at all. And maybe that's another criteria, is that we tend to gravitate towards people that understand construction, because you'll understand some of the unique pains that are unique to the construction industry. You'll understand that there is complications around the payment cycle. You'll understand that it's the documentation portion is complicated, or the work on site is complicated. I mean, and that we tend to like working with companies like that have, intimate knowledge of construction, because then we can trust them more.
Very good. Dana, do you track, how do you determine a successful implementation? Do you track a ROI or certain KPIs or anything?
Yeah, I mean,
like that?
I think we have whatever we're trying to solve for, there's usually a metric, a set of criteria that we're using to establish whether or not that product is going to check all those boxes. So we kind of come up with that, and it's either officially documented, or it's just things that we know that we have to have that product solve for. And if it can check all those boxes, and when it's tested on site, we also find that it validates all the things that we thought it would do, then we consider it successful. And then it gets rolled out into the enterprise if it's something that touches everybody.
Mm-hmm. How many software solutions do you guys have right now, if you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we moved to Procore, we tried to really pare down on our point solutions. So, I mean, we have Procore as the main system, and really what we've done is say as a business, if we're going to look at something else that Procore doesn't do, that it needs to be able to connect to Procore. So, I mean, we have Procore, we have our accounting system, and we have our HR system. So maybe those are the three big components. And then we have probably less than a handful of point solutions that will integrate into one of those systems.
Mm-hmm. What would be your criteria to adopt a point solution?
It's got to be something like, we know Procore pretty intimately. We know our accounting and our ADP. Our ADP is what we use for HR, but we know those systems intimately. So if there's something there that just isn't working in that platform, then we just go out to a point solution. So a good example of that is we use a point solution for expense and invoice management. Our accounting system could do it, but one, it's incredibly costly to put it in the accounting system. And two, we needed some additional flexibility or customization that we weren't sure we were going to get through our accounting system. So I think that was an example of sort of identifying, the existing product could do this, but let's look at point solutions to see if we can either get better pricing or a better product, or both, ideally.
Mm-hmm. How important is it if you're picking a point solution that integrates with your existing systems? Is that like a complete red flag if it doesn't?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's over the last few years, it's become full stop for us. At least has to have the ability to integrate. So we work with a third party to integrate systems that just don't integrate innately. But if it's just like, if it's closed off, there are no APIs, and we were going to have to, reinvent the wheel to get this thing to talk to other systems, then it's kind of a red flag, and it's more or less a no-go for us.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say, and if there are any technologies currently that you're experimenting with that you're most excited about? You don't have to name names if you can't.
I can't, but we are working with a very, very early stage AI company that's really focused on being, for lack of better terms, like a sidekick to your day-to-day. I think
have they been on Bricks and Bytes?
I don't think so. They might be your next guest.
Mm-hmm.
They have credibility, which makes them obviously more attractive to us. They came through a reference, which also ticks that box as well. And we like that they're taking their time and really addressing the issues we've had with other AI products to make their product even better. So like I mentioned, the one thing is the trust factor. That pilot we did was not successful because of the trust factor. So they're really taking time to make sure that we feel comfortable with the information it's spitting out. And the relationship thing, right? Like, we don't know when this thing is going to be ready to go to market. So we've really focused on just building our relationship and our trust so that we feel good about the product. I'm excited about what it could do and how it could help us as a business automate some of the, the less interesting things that people have to do on a day-to-day basis. I'm very excited about how it could potentially elevate our newer folks in the industry, our newer hires. I think that if it's done right, it'll just feel like it's a part of what they do every day, where they don't have to go to a separate program. They don't have to open up another window. They don't have to know another login, right? Those are all barriers that you don't think about. And I'm hoping that if this is done right, it will really feel like when you open up, Procore or your email or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask about robotics in the renovation space. Do you find any useful cases of robotics?
So we actually just had a few demos. We kind of do this on a cycle, it feels like. So we looked at Dusty Robotics, for instance, a while ago, and then we just looked at them again recently. Seems great, seems awesome. the challenges in renovated spaces, and those are the exact questions we ask them. The marketing material that you see is so good, and these contractors having such success with it that you're thinking like, why not me? Why can't we do it? But then, no judgment against those firms. It's just, if you read the fine print, or if you actually like do some digging, like everything is in these new construction spaces. So we would love to be able to participate in some of these robotic demo programs. In renovation spaces, it's just much harder. I mean, the conditions of the environment are so critical to the success of that robot. And it's not the technology, it's not the BIM files it needs, it's not anything like that. It's truly the environment portion of it that is it could be such a problem for robots in spaces like that.
Mine, why do you think their renovation space there's not much technology within this?
I mean, from robotics point of view, it's constrained of an environment, like Dana just said, right? And no floor is straight, right? How can you do a layout if no floor is straight and there's different? It's just different level, yeah. So I guess this space will take a few more years to catch up, if at all.
Yeah, I would also add that I think that adding this up in my head, that perhaps technology within the renovation space, because the renovations are very unpredictable, the technology is not so scalable, so it's less attractive for investors to put the money into this tech, so why there is perhaps less of it.
Of course, yeah. Each building is different, right?
I think it requires it really requires the human component to being able to problem solve like immediately, like those existing conditions, the unknowns, like it's until you uncover them, like maybe technology can obviously help with that portion, but then you have to make decisions that I think humans have to make. And I think renovation is just it's a different beast. It's more complicated.
We did before that go on to, we were talking about AI. How are you viewing AI as general? Are you, sounds like you're taking quite a, maybe it's the right way to do it as well, but perhaps a little bit more of a cautious step-by-step approach to implementing it within
reasonable,
Bulley Andrews. Yeah,
I think that I think there's something there. I think the question when we talk about it internally, the question that gets asked is this just going to be another VR, where there's so much hype around it, and it's something that just could not enmesh itself in the industry the way that it was maybe sold to do. This feels a little bit different, because I think what this portion of the industry has going for it is, I feel like anytime technology is consumer facing first, that it takes off better in the construction industry. So for instance, the QR code, right? It feels like it completely revolutionized construction. Like all of a sudden people realized that you could communicate digitally through this one little image, right? And all of a sudden, like everything was connected to a QR code. ChatGPT, for instance, I think like they did a great job in just making that tool available for consumers to use individually, and people used it all the time. And so when you think about having chatbots in your business, like that is not as crazy anymore. But I think where we are right now, and even where I'm struggling, is that information recall is not enough for us to feel like this technology has some sort of sticking or staying power. I think now the next step are the agents and like the action items and the suggesting of what to do once it's presented with this information. So I think there's a lot there, and I think you have to be cautious, because one, there's security concerns, of course, in AI. And so if you just throw the whole thing at your organization, you could be putting yourself at risk. I think the trust factor is huge, and if we don't invest in a product that we feel really comfortable with, like it could ruin your business, right? And I think that we want to make sure that we're solving for the right things. We don't want to just implement AI for the sake of it because we feel pressure to do so. We want to make sure that it's truly going to add value to the way that we do business here.
Yeah, so you are the next person actually who says that information recall, I think you called it,
Yeah.
which basically would mean that you basically get information quicker,
Mhm.
faster. It's not the solution, but AI agents who will do something with this, that will do something with this information, and you will get an outcome rather than a piece of information that you can act upon. Can
Sure.
you have you spoken to any of those AI agent companies? Like what's out there?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking with the company that we're working with now who built their product initially on information recall, and that was just their first step to get it to do something else. But we were just like, that's great, but we need something else. We have done many demos or participated in many webinars with other companies that are offering agentic solutions. It's all great in theory, but I think where businesses have to realize before they implement anything is that one, your data, you need to understand your data, whether it's clean or not. I mean, it's ideally more clean than it's not, but you have to understand your data. You also have to understand your business practices, like to a T, because an agent has to be able to understand that. And so it knows what to suggest to you to do.
That's a great
And so
point.
if you think that you're just going to deploy agents, right, and they're going to be these little magic helpers that are living in your computer, like that's not the way this is going to go. And so I think like if you take the time to think about it, it becomes a little overwhelming. And it just reminds you of the work you really have to do to make sure these things are successful when they're deployed.
I love that. I love that because like if an agent just assumes a workflow and you're not familiar with how your company does something and you just say, yeah, go and do it, like that could be a bit of a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also ultimately everything, well, not everything, but most of the things come down to money. So on this information recall solutions, for example, and I'll be happy if you both disagree, that these seem to me like a very easily to commoditize solutions, because it should be like a search, like a Google, which is very cheap. I don't know, $100 a month for a large organization to pay to just recall the information faster, quicker. It doesn't sound like rocket science, probably, right?
Right.
So we are really in need of something more significant.
Yeah, and I mean on the topic of the cost of this, and maybe that's not something we're talking about enough. I mean, if you truly went down the rabbit hole of data governance, data lake, data warehouse, and then you want to layer on products on top of that, and you want to use AI, you may or may not have people in house that can do it. So you may be paying for a consultant or a developer or an engineer, and then you're laying your own products on top of that. Like this becomes a very costly effort for it not to succeed. And so I think our approach is just it's cautious optimism, and it's really focused on identifying and solving for problems in the business. And if we think we're just going to implement it across the enterprise and it's going to find the problems for us and solve them, that may work out. But I feel like we're ripe for failure if that's our approach.
Okay.
Beautiful. Dana, when we spoke previously, you mentioned, and you, not just you, but a lot of people we speak to are concerned about supply chain issues, and perhaps this is exacerbated by the incoming tariffs and etc. that is going to be imposed. What's the pain with supply chain, and have you come across any solutions that are tackling the pain?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pain is the unpredictability of it.
Re-election.
Yes, definitely. 4 more years. The pain is the unpredictability of it. It's the back and forth of it right now. It's the tariff, and then it's never mind, we're not going to do the tariff, and then it's a bigger tariff, and then there's a tariff on the tariff, and I think we have someone like our VP of project development is really dedicated to understanding the supply chain process and all the products that are critical to our business and the work we do. Like he understands them innately. He consults all the different outlets out there that he can to pull the information, and he aggregates it into a report for us. So it's still like fairly manual, but he has dedicated himself to really being able to supply the business with the best information on supply chain. Which we then provide to our clients as well, because we think it's really important for them to understand that if they've got a project starting in, say, a year, like these are the things that could impact you if you don't get started right now. And the prices could continue to go up. So we can talk, contract and pricing now, But if you wait too long to make a decision, like this could be your problem in the future. That's been our approach. Not to say that there aren't great products out there that are managing supply chain better. But I think having someone dedicated to really understanding what's happening in the world has really worked out for us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wanted to touch on collaboration between general contractors. Do you guys work in silos or you collaborate?
I think in general we work in silos. However, I think where we can collaborate, it yields a much better result. And peer groups are great. I think in general, what I've learned from other of my peers is that we are way better when we work together than when we think that the technology is going to be like a differentiator for us. It's not. We should democratize it as best we can, because there's so much influence that we can bring to a product if we do it together. You're also battling against what the owner desires too, and so they've got a little bit of a say, and so you're trying to balance that as well. But I truly think that as a general construction world ecosystem, we are way better off if we can come together to help guide where these products need to go.
Okay, and is there any where do I sign up? Is there any group?
You have to get a promotion first, Martin.
I have been able to get connected to peer groups through products that we have looked at that we have not bought. They have created their own peer groups within those products. Procore is a great way to get connected to other general contractors in the area. You got to network the hell out of this industry in order to make friends and get information.
That's a great point. Yeah. Did we talk about this? I feel like I really wanted to ask it, then I can't remember if I did ask it, but your thoughts on how company culture plays a role within innovation?
We have not.
It does, I guess. That's the short answer. I think that you've got to have the buy-in. And if they think that you're just trying to find new applications or find new technology that is not considerate of what they do on a day-to-day basis, like, you're going to be met with resistance. So that's why I think it's so important for us, like, not having a dedicated innovation department, that we do bring in the folks that matter the most to make those decisions for us or with us, so that we can all have the right buy-in. I think too, like, for me, it's a feedback culture too. So if I'm receiving the feedback that this process isn't working anymore, I have to act on it. I have to at least acknowledge that it exists, because if you don't, then you get people that don't want to share their thoughts anymore. And if they're not sharing their thoughts, then you don't know where you need to go in the business. So I think culture is so important. I think they just need to feel heard, for one, and then I think you need to do something about it once you hear it.
That's a great leadership point, actually. Yeah, because like you say, it can go very easy for people when they feel that they're not heard,
right,
to cause all sorts of other problems. Yeah.
And Dana, so which areas within renovation space you think are lacking new technology solutions? What would you like to be out there for you to have easier job?
I think on the
X-ray.
I think for us, it's probably in the productivity side or the quality side. It's so hard to capture that in the field. We would love ways to automate it, but we just don't trust a lot of the solutions out there. And I think it's harder to assess productivity in a renovated space. I think it's much easier in new construction. And we've got some tools in our VDC department to assess quality and making sure that what we've coordinated in the office is actually making its way out to the field. But I think that's another area that really needs some focus.
Well, what's the reason for lack of trust? Like, maybe can you give an example?
I think, there are a lot of products out there that are built around like photogrammetry and then assessing that based on the model. And I think there's a lot that has to go into to set up that process correctly. And I think maybe it's on us, like, if you don't take the time to do it, it's garbage in, garbage out. So you're not going to get the right results. But then too, when it's like limited to one trade, like if it's just drywall they feel really confident about, then that might not be as helpful for us in the long run.
Yeah, that actually sounds like fits well with my theory that if it's difficult to set it up, and it's probably not a good
Exactly.
technology yet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe a last question from me would be around how you think the role of the general contractor will evolve over the next 5 to 10 years.
I hope that there is a world that exists where the general contractor, or maybe in general, like we move to more of a integrated project delivery format of construction. I think the general contractor in general gets pulled in way too late, and a lot of problems could potentially be mitigated if they're just brought in much earlier in the design process. I think that in a perfect world, that's the team, the full team would be building and designing this together because there's input that the architect and owner needs from the general contractor just in terms of budgeting. And there's ways that we could help feed them information so that they're making the best possible decisions earlier in the process so that when construction comes, it's a much easier, much cleaner process. So I also think that the role of the general contractor and maybe of companies in general is just going to be potentially integrated with technology. And there are a lot of contractors out there that are now acquiring or making very strategic decisions about how they position themselves in the technology space. And I can see that being more prevalent as the years go on. As contractors may have some sort of technology arm that they kind of lean into now.
Mm-hmm. Right. So my last one. Sorry, Owen?
I was just saying, grow in space.
Mm-hmm. So my last one, if you were to give an advice to founders pitching technology to you, what would you say?
I would say if you're going to pitch to us, understand our business. If you don't understand Bulley Andrews, haven't done any homework, then your pitch might be off the mark. I would also hope that you understand construction in general. And I would hope that you understand what your product does. If it's just a very baseline understanding of how to sell the product, we ask you questions about it and you don't know how to answer them, that's going to be a red flag. And I think that, in general, you should just, come across as a decent person that we want to work with. I mean, that should go without saying, but there's a lot of value in really enjoying the people that you work with.
And then being decent.
And being
I agree. Okay. Well, I think we covered nearly everything. Very, very good. So with that, Dana, could you tell people, have you got any initiatives going right now? Perhaps there's something you're looking for. I don't know. Are you hiring? Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean we're still up to our chins in the AI initiatives. I think that are we hiring? We're always hiring. We're looking for people that are interested in doing interesting work. We're looking for problem solvers for sure. I mean that is a huge criteria for us. We really have made a reputation on being good people to work with and problem solvers in the field and here in the office. So if you can dream it, you can build it.
Lovely.
Beautiful.
With that, thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.